Welcome to another presentation at the East Trade Winds, hosted by Bernie Franzgrote and Wayne Pratt. Our guest is Paul Kirch from Boss Academy.
So I want to talk a little bit about Askology Method. This is a methodology I created really to help myself in my early sales career. I learned that if I got the other person talking, they found me more interesting, which is an interesting dynamic. It almost flies in the face of logic, but it's really the reality. And so it focuses on mastering questions. Now, obviously, a lot of people say, well, in sales, you ask a lot of questions. But I have some specific questions, I think, that actually empower you, allow you to really control conversations and create a better, engaging, trust building situation. So, when we look at the landscape of business today, there are some interesting challenges. We all have networking opportunities galore all around us. And many of us are going to events as people are doing their introductions. Hopefully, you're paying attention, but sometimes you're worrying about something else. You go to face networking events, depending on the crowd, it seems like everybody knows each other, and you're sitting there trying to find a place where you can fit in. There are a lot of networking opportunities, but are we capitalizing? Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. But there's a harsh reality. I'm going to be talking a little bit about this from the perspective of business development, building your sales pipeline. We're all building relationships. We want to close business, but there's some harsh realities out there. Because there are so many networking opportunities, we feel like there's always another opportunity to make a connection. But when we look at sales statistics, it's now taken between 7 and 13 touch points to take somebody from a prospect to a client. And that's a pretty big leap from what it used to be, between 5 and 9. Now it's 7 and 13. 80% of sales outreach, you've got to have at least 5 phone calls, meetings before you can take them from proposal to a win. Most people are giving up after 1 or 2. They're making 1 or 2 outreaches, going, oh gosh, that person's ghosting me. They're not responding. It's just not worth it. They move on to the next one. And that is just part of the frustrating process. There's really some challenges taking place in how we network. If you've ever been to a networking event, sometimes you're sitting at a face-to-face meeting. If you're at a conference, you've got a captive audience, right? There's no distractions. They don't have the phone ringing. Their spouse isn't telling them that they need to get things done. Their boss isn't breathing down their neck. So they're a captive audience in the moment, and they seem extremely excited to talk to you. And this is encouraging. And they say, you know what? When you get back, let's have a call. This is exciting. Paul, I might even have a project we can work on together. This is great news. So then you get back, and all of a sudden, at the event, they tell you, I'm a decision maker. We can make this happen. Let's work together. Great. So you get back, and all of a sudden, they stop taking your calls. What's going on here? This isn't as much fun as I thought it was. Now they seem to be ignoring my emails. Today, we say people are ghosting us. Reality is they might just have other things in the way. They might have other distractions in their life, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a frustrating process. Now you get them on the phone, you're talking about this opportunity they brought up, and they say, I've got to run it by my team. Wait a minute, I thought you were the decision maker. You're not a decision maker now? This is starting to become something where I feel like I've been a little bit misled. Paul, we're happy with our current supplier. This isn't nearly what I thought it would be. You seemed so excited to talk to me. So now what happened? All of a sudden you're happy with your current supplier? It seems like a huge waste of time. We all go through this. Sometimes they seem so excited and then it goes nowhere. I remember I had a client, I was coaching a sales team, and the woman who ran that group went to an event in Las Vegas, and she came back and she goes, oh yeah, I was at the networking event. It was amazing. I had this one guy that I talked to, spent the whole networking event talking. She was proud of this. She goes, I spent the whole networking event talking to him about opportunities. He has a budget. He has all these things going. And I looked at her and I said, that's going nowhere. She got kind of irritated with me. And I said, I don't mean any disrespect, but you had an opportunity to probably meet 10 people during that event. You met one. And most likely that guy, you're going to now have a hard time reaching him. When you do reach him, he's going to have other things in the way. It's going to take a long time for that to manifest. A year later, she told me nothing ever came of that. And that's the problem. We sometimes take the easy route. We're talking to that easy conversation. When I go to networking events, I will talk to people for a few minutes, and then I'll say, listen, we're both here to meet a bunch of people. Why don't we schedule some time? Love to get on your calendar. And then you try and schedule time on their calendar. Then once again, when you talk to them, they're a captive audience. Unfortunately, sometimes we focus on the wrong things. You got to have that elevator pitch down. And often your elevator pitch is not engaging. It sounds artificial. It sounds forced. It doesn't really build trust. Introductory speech or good introductory way of talking about yourself, but most people don't do it well. We're not speaking to the right things. We're selling to the logical brain when they're buying from an emotional place. And it comes down to, is it what we say? Or really, is it how they hear it? Which is more important than what we say. Because all buying decisions take place at an emotional level. As much as we love to talk about the things that are easy for us to talk about, we may have the ability to do certain editing, or we have certain capabilities in our offering that we talk about with our coworkers or people that we're, that our trust network, and we're excited about those. We go out and talk to clients, and all of a sudden they're like tuning out. They're not really interested in what we had to say. What happened? Well, all buying decisions are taking place at an emotional level. But what emotions are we speaking to? I'm going to give you a copy of my Askology ebook. Feel free to download it. It's free. It is a great introduction to some of the things I'm going to talk about here, the questions. paulkurtz.com/Askology_free. Feel free to download yourself a copy of that. I think it's really going to help you. But, when it comes to my philosophy around Askology Method and why I started it, in my early sales career, I was kind of floundering. I thought, I like to talk. I'm going to be good at sales. Well, it turns out that was the opposite of reality. The more I got them talking, the more they liked me, the more they were interested in me. I've coached clients on this, and I've actually witnessed it firsthand. I had a guy who was a analyst who started his own research company. He loved his PowerPoint. His PowerPoint would dull people to death. I taught him to ask questions. One time I had a call with him after he'd met this guy. First call. And I go, how'd it go? And he goes, it was okay. I said, what do you mean? Tell me what happened. He goes, it was okay. And I said, no, seriously, just tell me what happened. He goes, well, I asked him a bunch of questions. And how'd it go? He goes, well, I don't know. I got a project out of it. And I said, wait a minute. First meeting, this is a very large company, and you got a project out of it? And he goes, yeah, but I don't feel good about it. And I said, why? He goes, well, I didn't get to do my presentation. I didn't get to talk to him about my company. I said, wait a minute. As you're asking him questions and having a conversation, didn't you respond and talk about how you could serve him and things you could do? He goes, yeah, I did that. So that's what you want. I said, you didn't need to dull this guy to death. You needed to actually engage him, get him talking, and have him show interest in you. And it comes down to uncovering their needs. I'm a very curious person by nature, and I think it's served me well over the years. Being curious, it really moves the conversation forward. It allows me to be inquisitive, but it's natural. It's genuine. I'm coming at this from a place where I really do want to get to know you. If I'm asking you questions about yourself, your family, your business, it's because I want to know. Now, there's some 4 questions we're going to talk about. There's some things you can do in advance to kind of be ready. So, what's your client's biggest fears? What are some of the things that are getting in the way? What are the things that are keeping them up at night, stressing them out? What kind of pain points are they facing? And then you think about their problems. How do we solve those? Is there an emotional connection between what we offer and what they're facing? And then an ideal client. We need to know our ideal client profile. But what does an ideal client get from you? They're an ideal client for a reason, right? You've defined that our clients are going to have these problems. They're going to be facing these challenges. We offer these solutions. Well, make sure you're speaking to that language. But what does your ideal client get? And if you can answer these questions, you start to build a message that's much more powerful than just going in and talking about features and benefits. What does a successful conversation, a successful introduction, a successful networking event, what does a successful conversation look like? Because if you can answer that, now all of a sudden, what does success look like? It puts you in a place where you understand it's about serving their pain points with your solutions. That's really what you ultimately want. And their fear is really a driver. It's a primal trigger. Let's talk a little bit about primal triggers, but I think it's important we all get primal in the way that we sell and the way we focus on conversations, making new introductions, making connections. Because primal triggers engage. I love this picture. My daughter told me it's a selfie, but that's the joy of having teenagers at the house. But primal triggers, if we think about them, They are all very emotional in nature, right? Things like belonging, scarcity, urgency, social proof, the authority we want to establish. Is there reciprocity? Is there fear? And when it comes down to it, if we think about the way that news was carried long before there was the written language, people told stories. But there's another primal trigger that everyone engages with. If you're sitting around a conference room and people are not paying attention, they've got their phones underneath the table, and all of a sudden the speaker asks a question. Everyone perks up. Questions are one of the ultimate primal triggers if leveraged right. Questions put you in control. And I think that's an important piece of this. So let's talk about what that means. So there's a lot of things that questions can do, right? They attract attention, they get people talking, but really that allows you to control the conversation. I remember I posted something on Alignable one time and somebody goes, well, I don't want to control people. It's not about manipulation. It's about honestly helping them by solving their pain points with what you have to offer. But if you don't control the conversation and they control the conversation, they're going to tune you out. Now, there are some traps that we fall into, and I want you to avoid the traps. We've all heard that closing questions create doubt in the mind of the buyers. Yes, no questions can be a trap. I use yes, no questions all the time, but I'm very careful. Normally, it's in support of something in conjunction with something else. But if I ask a yes, no question, I want to make sure it doesn't trap me. Because if you ask a yes, no question that goes the wrong way, it can be a dead end question. Are you happy with your current supplier? Yeah, I am. Guess what? You don't have anywhere you can go with that. Plus, they have now psychologically tuned you out. They've given themselves permission to negate the next things out of your mouth because you've given them permission to not be sold. No one loves to be sold, but they love to buy, right? Jeffrey Gimmer made that phrase famous. It wasn't his phrase originally, but I have another phrase I use, and that's if you're telling, you're selling, and no one wants to be sold. And sometimes we try and talk our way into business. But when it comes to trap questions, if we ask them a question that allows them to get permission to ignore what we say, it does put us in a bad place. But more important than the questions we ask sometimes is how are we listening? So I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, I had a very large client opportunity. I was already doing some small projects for this client. I was in the market research industry. And this was a company in Los Angeles, and they had a $2 million ad tracking survey they were doing. They had a partner they were working with, but I didn't have a lot of information. I knew the company I was with had great capabilities. We had great brand recognition. And I knew that if I could find out where they were doing some of that work, I could find a way of getting at least a portion of that business, if not all of it. And the woman I was working with was originally from Russia. She was tough. And it was hard to get information out of her. But I told my boss, I said, listen, this is what I want to do. I want to go in and here's my plan. Here's the questions I want to ask her. And I think that I can get her to break down and give us that information. He goes, I think it's a great idea. In fact, I've been planning on coming out and spending a few days with you. He says, why don't I come out and I'll join you in that meeting? I said, that would be amazing. He was a great mentor, a great coach. And so we get in this meeting and I'm just, conversation's going great. I get the opportunity just like I planned. I ask the questions. Afterwards, I'm standing in the parking lot, high-fiving myself. I'm pretty excited. I'm like, that was a good meeting. I look at my boss and he's doesn't have the same smile on his face that I was hoping he would, but I thought, man, it went well. He goes, Paul, let me ask you, when you had the opportunity to ask her that question about the project, what did she say? I said, everything went really well, except that. She didn't really answer it. He goes, oh no. She answered it. You were just too busy talking over the top of her. You didn't give her a chance to answer. Oh man, what a gut punch. I mean, it was probably the best lesson I've ever learned. At that time, it was very embarrassing, very deflating, and I realized I'd blown it. But it made me realize I need to learn to ask questions, but also learn to listen. And sometimes that's the hard part. So being an active listener allows you to not miss those opportunities. So I mentioned I was going to share this link again. You can download the Ask Askology ebook for free. I think it's going to help you because when we talk about the next 4 question types, you're going to get an idea of what Askology Method stands for and how it's used a little bit. We'll go deeper into that maybe in future events. But as I do this, there's going to be a couple shots where you have an opportunity to do some screenshots. When we look at the 4 question types, they're designed around allowing you to not only get to know them, connect with them, earn their trust, be a resource to them, but also control where the conversation goes. Now, the first question type, where do you want to go? This is GPS. So, where do we want to drive the conversation? Often we know what they're going to say in certain situations. We know what they're facing. We've done our homework. We know what they sell. We know the challenges they're facing. Leading questions are the ones that we kind of know the direction that they're maybe struggling. We ask questions that allow us to not pitch, but respond and interact. Good leading questions put you in control. It allows them to be heard and allows their pain points to be understood. An example of that is how your supplier's shipping delays impacting your production schedule. If this is your business, you probably know what they're going to say, but now you can talk about their response. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, let me tell you that we've actually put some processes into place to make sure shipping delays can't happen. And here's what we've done. So you're already prepared. You know how you're going to respond to those things. They're powerful questions. I actually think that everyone should be like trying to create their own list of questions. And it's not because you want to operate from a memorized list or read through a list, but the more you do this, the more it becomes habit. I have teenagers, 2 teenagers, and I have great conversations with them, deep conversations with them, because I've learned to ask questions that allow me to control the conversation. If I say, how was your day at school? You know what I'm going to get? Well, it was fine. If I get that, I get so much richer conversations out of them because I've learned how to engage conversations. It allows me to connect. Here's some examples. Here's some leading question examples. Depending on your business, some of these are going to make sense, some of them not, but you can all create your own. What would a successful ad campaign mean to your business? If you woke up to a $300,000 credit line, what would you do? Well, if you're in the lending space, that's a reality that a lot of people, wow, if I had a $300,000 credit line, I would buy some new equipment, maybe bring on some staff. Well, that's wonderful. I've got some solutions. Now you're not pitching, you're responding, interacting, engaging. Hopefully this is helpful to you. The second question type, we don't always know everything they're going to say. And this is where you get real power. What do you want to know? Sometimes the investigative questions are the ones that actually help us learn how to serve them better. The investigative questions, they uncover their real needs and what are they really facing. You know, what's your current marketing budget? You may not ask that on the first call, but you're getting to know them. Just tell me, what's your current marketing budget? Right now, we're doing about $10 million in spend a year on advertising. Now you have information that allows you to make plans. If we could just get 10% of that, that's a big impact. You know, what pain points have you encountered with your current suppliers? What's your current approach to customer retention? How effective has that been? You can ask follow-up questions. So investigative questions allow you to really uncover what are some of those things they're struggling with, and then allows you to provide solutions. Now, the last 2 questions are really more driving deeper engagement, earning their trust, being seen as a resource. Our why, it matters. Their why matters. Why matters, and it's an emotional connection. These are the empathy questions. Empathy questions connect at a deep emotional level. How are your recent layoffs I heard about on the news impacting your workload? Man, it's all getting dumped on me. I'm stressed out. What if I had a way of helping you reduce some of that workload, some of that stress? So when we think about empathy questions, how's your stress of managing your business affected your personal well-being? How's your family taking this? What challenges are you facing in balancing work and family life? If done right, these aren't forced artificial questions. These are questions where you really genuinely can care about them and tap into what they're facing, because now all of a sudden they're relating to you on a human level. Oh, this person understands me. What concerns you most about the future of your business? I don't know if we're going to be able to keep our doors open. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that. Listen, we've actually helped a lot of companies in your situation get through these difficult times. Would you be open to discussing that? Because I can share you some solutions. Absolutely. Let's talk about that. The last question, I call it poking the bear. These are questions that can be extremely powerful. And these are instigating questions. Instigating sounds like such a negative word, but there are times where they reveal things that if you ignore the opportunity to discuss on it, you're missing a golden opportunity. Sometimes they're facing pain, they're facing frustration. Taking my market research experience, I had several times where I would say, have somebody reveal to me that their previous supplier screwed up a project, didn't get it done in time, came in over budget. And if I didn't tap into that, I missed a golden opportunity. Shouldn't your vendor have been on top of that? Shouldn't they caught that mistake? These are not manipulated. These are not rude questions. These are powerful questions that allow you to connect with where they are from a pain perspective. What do you think is holding your business back from reaching its full potential? How's the economy impacting you? And why are you now all of a sudden having to use some discount suppliers? It doesn't sound like your business model. No, it isn't, but that's where we are. Okay, well, what if we could help you serve at a higher level for the same price? Is that something you'd be open to exploring? Absolutely, Paul. All right, so these are the 4 question types. And where does this lead us? It all comes down to a very powerful word, discovery. This is where question mastery really comes into play. We want to become better at asking questions. Like I said, create your lists. That doesn't mean you read from the list. You could use a cheat sheet, sure, but you want this to be natural and flow. You will not get good at this if you don't practice it and create your own questions and start to understand your deeper offering, the benefits you provide, and the pain points you can solve. I guarantee every single one of you, even when you did your introductions, a lot of you talked about the features and benefits. You talked about things that are much more logic driven. You didn't talk about the emotions you're addressing. So create a list of relevant questions. Start with 5 each. 4 question types, 5 each, that's 20 questions. You can even get AI to help you. Now start thinking about how to integrate these into your conversations. What's working, what's not, how are people responding? And this is a good group here. Or you maybe have some other colleagues. Do some role playing. I do role playing exercises with my clients all the time. And if you ask more questions in your daily life, I ask questions at restaurants. I ask questions of my kids and everyone I'm around because I am curious. It allows me to really connect with them. I really just want to say thank you. The journey starts here. Let's change the way that we're having our conversations. Let's go from logic driven to emotionally focused. You want to connect with me? Here's some more information about how you can reach me. Thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this.
Unlock the full potential of networking with East Trade Winds. Are you eager to connect with our esteemed guest speaker and delve deeper into the ever-expanding universe of connections? Simply scan the QR code now and embark on a journey of endless opportunities. Join us at East Trade Winds, where we gather online via Zoom every Tuesday from 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, you're welcome to connect with us. Seize the moment, register for free, and start exploring today. Fancy sharing your insights as a guest speaker? We're looking for you. Reach out to Wayne Pratt to ignite your speaking journey. Email him at wayne@motivateyou.ca or connect with Wayne on LinkedIn. Don't wait. Take action and be a part of a global community that's shaping the future of business networking.